Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. This is everything to do with the Oak Sound Soothe Live, available exclusively on the Avid VENUE S6L. My name is Rob Allen. I'm the product manager for Live Sound at Avid. We have a really distinguished group of people to talk about this plugin. And I'm going to start by introducing you to the panelists. The first person I wanted to introduce you to is Sean Sully Sullivan. Hey, Sully, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I was going to ask you where you are, but I know where you are. But tell the people in the webinar where you are.
I'm currently enjoying a day off in Madrid, Spain, out on tour with Roger Waters.
That's right. So I got the privilege of seeing Sully's show last night in Barcelona, which was sensational. Sounded really, really good. So congratulations on that, man.
Thank you.
We got Ollie, Eric, Kiskinen. Sorry, I've been practicing that all day and I just went blank. Ollie.
Very good.
from Oak Sound. Ollie's the founder of Oak Sound, the big brain behind Soothe Live. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks.
And I guess you're in the office in Finland, I guess.
Yeah. Right in Helsinki.
In Helsinki. You got Avid Purple in the background, which is very corporate of you. And I've got my esteemed colleague, Robert Scoville. Looks like a blurred out enormous dome behind you, I'd say.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of, we got a load in day here in Charlottesville. So, hopefully we'll stay quiet here for long enough for us to do this webinar. So yeah.
So who are you
mixing? Great to be here with all these guys.
Back
for a really short run with Kenny Chesney. We're doing a set of about 20 arenas over a few months here.
Great.
Yeah.
And then last but definitely not least, my oldest friend in rock and roll, probably, Mark MC Carlin. How are you, man?
Yeah, we're all good.
Looks like you're at home.
I've got 10 days off. We're in the middle of an arena run in the US with Muse. So I'm back home in Ireland in Dundalk. This is our studio, Black Mountain. So, day off means work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Nice. Not a real day off, but it's a nice day off, right? Sitting behind a lovely desk and
no,
some great speakers.
It's beautiful work. Beautiful working up here. So yeah, all good.
Yeah. Well done, man. All right, so I'm going to start off with some questions for Ollie. So Ollie, we're all super excited. Everybody on this call obviously we've all been using the Soothe Live product at our concerts. And we're going to get into that in a minute, but maybe just give us some background. So, how long have you been working on Soothe? What's the background to Oak Sound? Give us a little bit of the history of that.
Sure. Soothe, Oak Sound was founded in 2016. I was a student in Sibelius Academy studying music technology at the time, and they taught us that the way to get the good vocal sound in a procession is to go through each syllable of the vocal line with an audio suite or EQ and cut out anything that's offending with a fairly sharp cue. And that we heard that many of the top engineers were doing that, so I started doing it myself as well, and quickly found it to be very laborious. So I also have background in computer science and DSP, so I started to look for an automatic solution for that. It took me a couple of years to achieve, but I basically made the plugin for myself and pushed it out the door, see if the markets would like it. And I've been very grateful for the reception that it got originally, because it has allowed me to grow a company around this. Originally one product, now there's more of them, and soon one more Soothe for the world.
Well, thanks very much for your work on this. We're all, we've all been using it. We're all delighted with it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Even though, regarding Soothe Live and how we got here, already in 2017, I always wanted Soothe to be available for live sound, because I've always felt that would be even more useful area for the sort of processing that it does. So it's been in the works. It's been in the back burner for what is it now? 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
But it did take a couple of iterations to go through to finally land here. So we've been working on it for S6L for, I guess, like 3 years now already. So it's been a long process and a lot of fine tuning.
Absolutely. We've been in beta for like a year now, I think.
Yeah.
And all of the guys on this call obviously were part of the beta.
Yeah.
That's why they've been used on shows.
Yeah.
I tell you, one of the questions that comes up all of the time when I speak to people about Soothe, because I'm like a kind of proud grandfather, you know, I'm always telling people how great it is and they should get involved. So what, just spell out, what's the difference between what Soothe Live does and what like a dynamic equalizer or a multi-band compressor does? What's the difference? What's the secret sauce?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question, and it does get asked. Soothe, when you think of dynamic EQ, or when you think of a multi-band compressor, what they typically have going on under the hood is that they have you specify some sort of frequency and you specify some sort of threshold, some sort of gain. That once you go past this level in this frequency region, you start attenuating or boosting. And the thing that we've always tried for with Soothe is that it tries to deduct those things from the signal, from the timbre and from the features, the sort of mathematical features of the signal itself, so that you save time. Sort of you control in a way like a meta process of what it should be looking for, and it automates the actual selection process and tries and how to do it so that the tone doesn't change or the timbre doesn't change too drastically.
All right. Thank you. Jenny, you guys want to jump in with anybody got a question for Ollie that's been using it? Sully, I know that you've been working really closely with OX Sound. You've sent some presets and stuff that are now in the software.
Yeah, people ask me the same thing. They're like, why are you using that over, a multi-band, this or that? And, my answer is always because once you set a threshold in those, if you have that peak or that frequency you don't like that's lower than that, your current processor won't get it, where Soothe will adjust threshold because it's looking for the resonance and not based on a threshold that you set. And so it's really intuitive to go, the 3 and 4K are bumming me out on this mic all the time, not just above a certain level. And Soothe will auto detect those frequencies, those resonances, and go after them at any level, which makes it, it's just so seamless. You put it on something and based on the depth and the, sensitivity controls, you really can affect like how it works to go after those things, earlier or later. And it's just game changer for me in every single way you can imagine.
Yeah, it feels more surgical, right? It's almost like happening in a kind of very transparent way. So I sometimes hear people using a multi-band compressor and changing the way that people sound, like almost like they have a speech impediment or something. But with the Soothe, it's so specific and it's dealing with just the specific resonances that it's kind of less of a broad brush, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. That's sort of there's. Especially with Soothe Live, there's two things to it. Like you can use it with a detail setting up. You can use it more like you would use the studio version of the Soothe 2. It becomes very transparent, very sort of looks for specific resonances. But we've also felt when designing the product, because it's been fully made for the live sound market and fully made for the live sound engineer, is that it can be also used more as a multi-band thing, because there are uses for that as well when you dial the detail very low. So you get the same artifact-free processing, the transparent processing, but it becomes more level dependent as well. So we felt that there is also that sort of use case for it that would be very beneficial for the live sound market.
Sure, it really is. So MC, you were on the beta team as well, right? So you've been working with it. I mean, I know you worked in it in the studio first, and then you joined. Tell me some of your experiences with it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of new. Yeah, it must have been quite close to the start of the beta. I used it last year with Snow Patrol.
Yeah,
that was the first outing that I had with it, and I was quite familiar with the concept, having used Soothe in studio quite a bit. But much like Sully, once I applied it to the in the live domain, it became a game changer for me as well. Um, you know, like all of us, we had to do that little, adjustment in our minds that this is not it's not a dynamic EQ, it's not a multi-band, that's not what it's doing. And it's, when you marry it with some of the tools that you use all the time, that's where its power can really shine as well. I sometimes tell people that the Soothe is what you're not hearing. It's the thing you don't hear.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been fantastic. And then when Muse started up, it was an absolute no-brainer to continue the beta on that. Actually, that's one thing about the beta is I never in one show had one iota of an issue. Even at the very early stages of the beta. And as us as live engineers, nothing spooks the horses more than a crackle or a pop here or there. But the whole way through the beta, everything was absolutely stable for me.
Yeah, that was the extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
I think we all went through the same kind of journey where we were like, all right, I'll try it in the afternoons in a virtual sound check and see what I think about it. And then got to the point where I was like, I really want to put this in the, I really want to put this in the game.
I went in quite early, I must admit.
I didn't wait either. I was like,
just went for it. Yeah.
I think I was ready to accept any punishment I might get because it was helping out so drastically if it didn't. But same with me, same experience, no issues the whole entire level. We had 3 different beta versions and not one of them had it, showed any problems for me.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time making sure that there shouldn't be anything, like it's very robust in every way that we could have imagined, just to be safe, I guess, because we haven't really had any issues. But personally, because I've been using it, the very cutting, bleeding edge versions on gigs myself as well, and I've always been a bit like, oh, can I do it? But sort of, I felt anxious to make sure from the design point of view already that nothing can happen, that there's safety limits on everything, that nothing can blow, or so it's been that's one of the things that's been very arduous as well, to make sure that everything is reliable and that there is no sort of ways to divide by 0 or do anything like that, to make sure that it's very stable. So we spent a lot of time doing that.
Sure. I don't know, Robert, can you tell me some of the channels you've been using it on, like input channels or something like that? Maybe Chris, you could throw up the screen so people can see what we're actually talking about.
Yeah, I you asked the question earlier, what is the difference between it and dynamic EQ? And I mean, honestly, it took me a little time to process it, no pun intended, using it. And as I started to explain it to people, the kind of the nuance of it is that, as opposed to like dynamic EQ, where you're targeting a specific frequency, with Soothe, you're targeting a range of frequencies, So, as your target shifts over time, so does Soothe. It'll change right with it. So that's primarily, for me, that's the big difference of it, where you can set this range on it, and over time it is, going after the things that need to be gotten after on that, whether it's a vocal or whatever. And I think some of the inputs I'm using it on that have had the most impact on it is things like mandolin, things like fiddle, things that have an acoustic pickup on them, where when you're in a loud environment with a PA system, that PA system's creating an overtone series on that instrument, and it just completely eliminates that process. It's just absolutely fantastic. I mean, it just keeps the thing sounding so natural. It's incredible.
Yeah. What about you, Sully? I think you've been using it on some buses as well, right? Can you talk to some of that?
Yeah, I typically put it on like my aux send to my reverb for my vocals, because I might not want to take the consonants out of my vocal going into the reverb, but I might want to take, the consonants or the harsh, the attacky type bits going into my reverb to not excite my reverb in weird ways, that might tend to get tails off of S's and C's and K's and T's, that kind of thing. And so by having it on a bus, you could really bury those frequencies and not affect your overall vocal sound that you hear through the mix. But what goes to the reverb can be really tailored and really shaped to, manipulate the reverb like you've never been able to do before. When you send, especially with in a studio with a really high end condenser and a pop filter and everything in your working in your favor, it's a lot easier. But the way we do it, there's background bleed, there's all kinds of other junk in there, and you're using compression drivers to get the signal to the back of a room, which tends to make things a bit obnoxious, and you wouldn't really want to go after that on your input because you still need the phonetics. But to a reverb, the GUI is like buried on C's and K's and T's and stuff on consonants. Sometimes they're really in your even deverb, which a lot of people are like, that old chestnut, clunky deverb. You can make deverb sound like $1 million reverb just by tailoring what goes into it. It's amazing to be able to shape things that way.
Yeah, I agree on that one. I've done exactly the same thing. It's almost like having like a next generation Abbey Road filter, right? I mean, where it's like normally you would just low pass all that top end off of there, but now you can be way more selective on it. It's way cooler to use it in that sense. It's great.
MC, what about you? Can you got a couple of examples of the kind of things you've been doing with it?
Well, straight out of the gate, overheads, guitars, coming obviously Snow Patrol and especially Muse, dealing with quite extreme frequency content and changes of frequency content. That was the first, game changer, as it were, for me on that front. But then, like all of us, the longer we've had it, the mind keeps spinning and you keep finding new applications for it. One recently was on the Muse show. Obviously, we're doing a lot of media feeds, social media feeds, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm setting a Soothe on my ambient group. So like the crowd noise, et cetera, just sit a Soothe on that. And it just takes care of so many issues, like an auto mix kind of function. So that, like all of us, every week that goes by, you go, the case uses just keep. I mean, it has obvious case uses in. Yeah, it was quite interesting to hear Robert's experience with acoustic instruments. In the studio side, I'd always loved Soothe on orchestral, inputs. It took care of so many issues there. Live, I haven't had any circumstance yet to use it on orchestral stuff because we haven't had any. But I keep finding uses, and it's great hearing the other guys, like the ideas they're having. And once we get it into the out into the wild, that's just going to keep expanding. A fascinating one that I'm waiting to try live is how to use using the side chaining to create vocal space, especially with thick electronic program. That's one I'm looking forward to. But yeah, it's like when we get it, it's obvious uses. It does so well. I can't wait to see what the unobvious uses are as well.
Man, I'm telling you, it's an absolute game changer on a couple of, and I know we're going to use that word a bunch here, but live banjo with a PA system, bouzouki with a PA system, and it's just magic. I mean, it's like, just how loud do you want to get it? It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you told me earlier, MC, about using it for the ambient mic. So you got a bunch of microphones around the building to record the crowd sound, and normally you have to fiddle about with that. You might have to do a little bit of work on it, a bit of EQing, and then you summon all of that into a stereo group, presumably, and then you summon that into the recording just to get the ambience of the gig into the social media. And so that's
exactly.
It's a really clever use of it. Yeah. Taking out all the rumble when you don't need it.
Thanks, MC. I'm going to be trying that one in about an hour here. Thanks for that one. I appreciate it.
There you go. I'm gonna try and get the band to hire a banjo player so I can use your ones.
I'd like to hear that, a banjo player with Muse. I'd pay to see that.
Yeah, that's worth the money right
there. You saw last night, Rob, the end of my set is a marxophone, a accordion, a dobro, there's a melodica, like on, and every single one of those inputs in the end of the show is just, everyone's got Soothe on it.
Yeah, they had the marching drum. They walk out in front of the PA. They go through the crowd.
In front of everything.
They go, in front of the PA. They go out into like backstage, and they got a video on them in backstage, right? And the sound just was ridiculous. Just kept going all the way backstage.
at some point you just got to not be too proud to use it, right? I mean, you can't kind of fall into this mindset of, oh, I don't need to use all this processing on it, whatever, it either sounds better or it doesn't, and it sounds better with it on there. I don't know how else to explain it.
So yeah, Ollie, explain it. Why does it sound better? What have you done? What's the
Yes, please tell us, Ollie.
Right. Well, what it tries to do is as it looks into the timbre, it looks for excessive energy. It looks into the resonances, the excessive energy, and it tries to take that away. So essentially, how to retain a timbre while still reacting to resonances in a way that at the same time the timbre stays the same, but reduce the obnoxious levels of certain frequency ranges. And especially in live sound, I found that since the performances are always more dynamic than in studio. Like in studio, you can prioritize the mic placement, and you don't have PA systems running and all those things. You don't have to push a miniature microphone into between the flaps of a saxophone and hope that it picks up something. But in live sound, you don't get those luxuries. You go with what you get. So you typically have unoptimal microphone placements that are too close to the body of the instrument. That we've just learned to live with those and try to manipulate those things with, say, EQ. But the thing is that, well, like same with vocals, is that once you start singing or playing, the radiation pattern from the instrument changes depending on the tone. So you have uneven, like when you play a scale, you get uneven balance for each of the tones. So Soothe tries to compensate that sort of effect, and that makes mixing with it easier. I've found it personally to I mostly mix music that has acoustic instruments and miniature mics, DPAs, is that it makes it easier to mix, since it controls those sort of dynamic changes in the timbre, in the tone of the instrument when you adjust it accordingly. So I guess that's why it sounds better. You still get your creative freedom. You still get to use your EQ for boosting those highs or boosting those lows or doing whatever you want. But you don't have to take care of you don't have to use the EQ so much for trying to chase those dynamic changes in the sound source, or the combination of the sound source and the microphone. That's the sort of main idea behind the process for Soothe Live.
Yeah, I'd say you succeeded there, because I find myself using way more EQ just for sweetening as opposed for surgery. I don't. Yeah. It's like I'm not even using EQ on some of these instruments to attack it tonally. It's just to make it sound even better. It's an amazing transformation in kind of the thinking patterns when you hear an instrument now. So
nice to hear.
It's quite interesting as well, as it's not replacing anything in your favorite signal chains. It's a complement to the favorite things in your signal chains. I think that's something that it's a new tool, that really so we all have our flavor choices, and we like a certain EQ for a certain thing, and it really lets us keep doing that and doing it more so.
Yeah, absolutely. The show I was using it most on was in a immersive 360-degree immersive, and as you know, object based, you tend to do less corrective EQ and compression anyway, because each audio object has a space, and that the lovely thing about Soothe is it was a kind of busy show, things were flying around and stuff, is I could just throw it at the backing tracks, or some backing tracks from 25 years of albums all recorded in different formats, and it just kind of kept everything in its place in this nice little audio space in the mix, and it just saved me a lot of time and a lot of energy. I wasn't chasing EQs around the room. I was having things pretty flat and pretty uncompressed, and just leaving them a quite natural sounding, which is where I tend to prefer things to be.
Yeah, and we all know with live sound, we're so far away. Chasing really gets you nowhere. You're way behind what happened. Trying to, there's a problem, and you go at it, but it's already happened. You're 90 feet, 100 feet from the PA. You're way behind. And 7 Soothe, just like, okay, I know this is going to be my issue, and you set the sensitivity and the frequency range, and just forget about it and just get on with pushing faders and doing what you do, and not have to worry about the mess of chasing, because you're behind. You can't keep up.
Yeah, personally, I've found that the most enjoyable part for me in live sound mixing is doing the balance, and with Soothe, it's easier to do the balance because the sound sources are already sort of behaving. You get this sort of safety net in it.
Yeah, 100% there. I agree.
Yeah. Somebody said to me the other day, actually, it was my boss, Rich. He said, he goes, oh yeah, he goes, it's like less fixing, more mixing, which is it's a kind of. So I thought that kind of great, not that we're going to use a cheesy marketing phrase,
Ollie,
but
there's your marketing right there, man. You got it.
that's free. Yeah, you got that for free.
Oh, thanks. That's a good one.
Scandinavian cynicism. No, I mean, but that's the whole point, right? You're doing less corrective EQ and dynamics, and you do more.
Yeah.
More just getting in the moment and enjoying the music.
Yeah, it tries to also remove the sort of like I said, we still have our own preferences, like when you want to add the flavor, but it does remove, or I found it to remove, especially in acoustic instruments and vocals, the need for the sort of bread and butter EQing and the bread and butter compressor, because it's sort of doing those both a bit. That's sort of one of the differences with Soothe Live and Soothe 2 is that Soothe 2 tries not to be a compressor at all. Soothe Live tries to be a bit when it's needed because of the dynamic nature of live sound. That it just makes mixing a bit easier if it takes those popping S's off, or if it takes those sort of sudden mic positioning changes that start to sound odd quickly. If it evens those out, or the sort of a capsule resonance on a handheld mic or something, sort of get that one tone when it pops up.
And that's a really important point, right? That Soothe Live is a completely new plugin. It's obviously it's based on Soothe 2, but it's remanufactured, right? It's been a long process.
Yeah, it's been a long. I think we're in the 6th revision with Soothe Live at the moment. It's been there's the design aspects of it, like how should it work and what should it do, but even behind or before those, we had to take into account how to cut down the latency from the process in the first hand, and when you start cutting latency, you basically start adding or making the refresh rate higher, and when you make refreshing higher, or the refresh rate higher, you start to increase the CPU intensity or the CPU load. So how to keep the CPU load down or at the reasonable level, how to make it feasible to have on your system, any sort of system, while still keeping the latency down. That's been the sort of tug of war that I've personally been chasing for 3 years now with this, like even since I had the prototype.
I have to say that's one of the stunning things about it is how efficient it is, how little load it's placing on anything, which leads us, to be able to use multiple instances and throw it on groups and things. It's not something that you're going, well, maybe I can have 4 of them and that's my lot. It's just, it really is incredible how efficient you've made it. Actually, another thing on that, it's quite incredible how, I don't know how you did this in the design process. Soothe works straight out of the blocks. You don't necessarily have to adjust anything. It'll do the job. But then within the controls and within the parameters of the controls, you've got so much scope to kind of go further. So that was quite it, because later you put Soothe, an instance of Soothe, you open it with, I mean, I know we've all done our presets, so I know we've all learned how to focus it, but just straight up Soothe does so well.
Yeah.
But then the parameters that you've given and the controls that you've given have created so much scope as well. So I mean that was an incredible bit of development as well.
That's it's good to hear. Under the hood, I think it has, I can't remember exactly anymore, 20 or 30 parameters, and each of those parameters that you see is controlling multiple ones, so that we try to go through the most typical use cases that you would want to have and the sort of typical sound sources that you would have, and make each of the parameters go through a path in that sort of a complex space of how how to control the process so that we get all the sweet spots, to get all the flavors. That's the thing that's taken a lot of time. That's why we had such a long beta, is to refine that constantly, to try to get all those specific, like when you think of a process like Soothe, you start to think about what you should be able to do with such a processing. And if you go on a slap a plugin in that sort of situation, and if it's not able to do that, even though you have this mental model of it, that's sort of a bummer. So we have to make sure that it actually doing those, and that it's intuitive how it's doing it and when it's doing it and what sort of settings you should be using it with to achieve the things that you want to achieve. So.
Yeah, and from the Avid end, we had to actually, there's going to be a software release 7.1.1 that comes with the Soothe, and we had to do some serious GUI work to make our GUI, our general user interface, the screen that you can see behind me, to make it quick enough and accurate enough to show the actual work that Soothe was doing. So forced us to actually improve
kudos to your devs. It was great that we finally got it. Yeah, I think we uncovered something, like Soothe specifically uncovered something that was a sort of a bottleneck, but it's now you got it all fixed and it's been perfect ever since. So it's lovely.
Yeah, that's a guy called Valentine.
See, it's true.
Yeah.
Soothe makes everything better. See, it's
so okay. So the view I'm seeing, I'm not sure if we're sharing the screen so that people are seeing the things, the parameters that we're talking about as we're going. I'm just seeing I can just see all of the people that are talking. Oh, there's Chris Lambick's throwing it up now. All right, so let's have a look at some of these parameters. MC, do you want to talk about some of the stuff that you know, the typical thing we would do, I guess, is we got these the colored dots are the frequencies, right? That and that's, we point Soothe to look at this specific group of frequencies, and then we can narrow or widen the area that we're looking at. What would be your kind of workflow, MC, if you woke up to for the first time on an instrument? Where do you start?
Well, like I alluded to with Ollie, the initial preset sets you up quite nicely. Actually, it's you'll see it generally has a biasing. I mean, I always think it as a kind of a biasing. So you can see, like, usually as live engineers, that frequency range between 2K and 4K is usually the first thing that's gonna, be upsetting the apple cart, as it were. So you're kind of set up straight away for that. Generally, what I'll try to do is I'll use the low and high pass to kind of, bring the focus in to kind of where I'm going. Obviously this is incredibly input dependent. So if it's, that instance with the ambient group, you would leave it all open. If I'm looking at vocals, I'm generally my resonance is below 200, or not what's freaking me out there. So I'll tend to focus in first. Then,
and just be clear, the filters are not affecting the sound. They're not filtering the sound. They're just filtering the attention.
This is and that's something you've got to get your head around as well. You're seeing almost. I mean, Ollie will probably correct me on some of my inaccuracies, but it's almost seeing the shape of the process. I'll quickly go to just dial in the depth before I go much further than that, before I shape the frequencies too much. I'm a bit of, Ollie will probably slap my hands when he sees my show. I'm a demon for getting the speed up nice and fast.
You can do that, yeah.
So,
you can do that.
Yeah. I try to go, yeah. So I believe there's now an update on the GUI. You'll see that the speed knob will start to go pink. Actually, in the version I'm running, I don't have that. I'll tend to get it fast, and then I'll tail that off as I feel I don't need it. And again, then it's very program dependent with the detail where you'll go. Ollie, maybe you want to pick up why you would go broad and why you would go fine.
Yeah, and talk us about why is the detail going pink, Ollie, and why is the speed going pink? Give us a little bit of insight into that.
Right. Well, we found that, like, when tweaking the parameters, that if you go too fast, And especially if you have a very bass heavy processing or bass heavy source, I mean, it can start doing what a compressor would typically do, which is to follow the waveform. It starts to crackle a bit if you're driving it with like depth has to be around 10 to 15 points too high. So it's in a way, from our perspective, it's a user error, but like you never really do that. But just to add a warning into the fast speeds that it's able to produce something. But that being said, it's already like a indicator of a gain staging error if you ever encounter that. Same with detail is that we found that the very highest detail settings may start on specific audio sources like monophonic sources. They can start to sound a bit artifacty, but at the same time the detail above 9 can be very useful for example drum overhead. So the way I would do drum overheads is to push the detail all the way up and speed all the way down. You don't have any like bass heavy sources in that range, and you want to really target those whistlings. So there are specific use cases where you want to venture into these sort of not danger zones but sort of attention zones. In terms of the default preset and the parameter ranges overall, the basic the default of the factory preset is designed for monophonic instruments, mainly vocal. So it's a vocal preset already there. It has multiple curves under the hood that you're not able to adjust to make it so. Once you start increasing,
some of the guys on this call, right, have been involved in the presets. Sully, I know that you've shared some of your presets generously with the Oak Sound people. You just throw that up, Tris?
Yeah, thank you so much.
So one of them is the cupped vocal, I think, right? That's yours. Do you want to tell us what you were using that on? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was during beta, I was out with Rage Against the Machine the whole year, and Zach is probably the quintessential 58 cup 58 user you could come across, and that's part of his sound, and a lot of guys that do that like that sound, but there are things that still need dealt with in that scenario, and so I probably had the best case to come up with a preset like that. I got Zach De La Rocha spitting on a mic as hard as he does, and Soothe it really just dealt with that mid-range. A 58 is kind of got a bit of a spike in its response at that 1.6 to 2K kind of anyways, and then when you cup it just opens that up down to like 800. It just gets really obnoxious in the mid-range, and to have something like this, and there's times where he would let go of the mic and he wouldn't do it, and so you wouldn't want to EQ it and then have it sound horrible when he's not cupping it. So Soothe, just to go after it, my motto is don't fix problems by creating new problems, and Soothe really helps that. You can just deal with things when they're the issue, and it just stays out of the way when they're not an issue. So perfect for that.
Yeah, it's almost the issue when he uncups it, right? So
yeah, exactly. When he lets go of the mic or he's talking between songs and he's not doing his thing, that if you've just EQ'd it to work with the cups, use case, now it's horrible, and it just sounds awful when he lets go of it. And so Soothe dealing it when it's a problem and leaving it alone when it's not. Perfect.
So Robert, we're going to be looking forward to your mandolin and bouzouki presets for this.
Yeah, I'll throw them up there. I'll share this one with you. It'll be interesting to see how Ollie reacts to this. When I first got it, actually, Chris, can you share that screen again, and I'll just talk through this? Because anybody knows me, kind of knows my motto. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So one of the things I did right out of the gate, the very first thing I did was put it right across the mix bus.
Wow.
And what I discovered very quickly is it works almost like the ultimate sweetening tool. And my approach is to take the high and the low pass focus and roll them up, maybe to 10K, 12K, and then low pass up to right about there, a little lower than that maybe. And then take the 4 filters and give them a graduated set of detail and speed. So the purple filter would have the highest speed, highest detail. Next one would have a slightly lower speed and detail, and getting lower as you go on, so that and I would have it all set flat there. So then when things would just bubble up in the mix, it would just automatically take care of it. It was just this incredible, it almost felt like limiting, but really, really good sounding limiting, and you could, just use the depth of each one of those filters to make each one of them more sensitive to that range. I was just blown away how good it worked right out of the gate, where I was just like, oh my gosh, if this is the first thing I'm using it on and getting this kind of thing. So where you have it right now, like if you see the dips that are going on there, I would have that be in really fine detail and really fast. So it was really just, it looked very spiky there, but it sounded totally natural. As long as you keep that up above about 1,000 hertz, it seemed to handle the speed of it really well. And I probably wasn't even that deep. I mean, it was just really tickling it, but boy, did it make a difference in a big room, man. I'll tell you. Wow.
Yeah.
I did the same thing on my mix bus, basically identical settings.
Yeah.
If we got that as a preset, Ollie, is that in there as a preset? We definitely need that one in there.
I'll give you it as a
into
preset if you want it for certain.
Yeah.
If you want it.
Let's have the Robert Scoville mix bus and the Sully
Just a mix bus
presets.
sweetener, man. I mean, it just works so
Yeah.
great.
Very
And
cool.
the coolest thing about it is that you're pushing instruments into that, like when you push up solos and things like that, and you just feel like you got no end to it. It's like, if I keep pushing this up, it's just going to keep getting louder and better sounding. I mean, it's just one of those cool things, right? Don't feel like you got any top to it.
That's amazing. So, okay, here's a $64,000 question. We've been making a big fuss about this plugin. We've invested a lot of energy and time and money, as both companies, Oak Sound and Avid, to make this available for live sound. We spent a lot of research hours and time. And was it worth it? Can you imagine mixing a show without it? Anybody? Is it now always in your portfolio? MC, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, you can mix it. We've mixed shows without it for whatever, but
About
do I
100
want
years
to
in
mix
my
it without
case.
it? No. Yeah. But do I want to mix it without it? No.
No.
I can mix without it, but do I want to? No.
It's the same thing when when it became available for Pro Tools. You just couldn't go on without it anymore. You did it before and you found ways, but now you're just like, nope, that's the easiest way to go at this and quickest and less time consuming.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
All right. So hopefully during all of this, there's been a few hundred people in this webinar. They've been asking questions to our experts in real time offline. And if you got any further questions that you want to ask the panel directly, about Soothe and its use, or maybe even about the current shows that they're working on, general questions, and now's your chance to chuck them into the Q&A window, and our team of people, I think Chant will read them out in a bit. But any last thoughts, Robert Scoville, before we move over to the Q&A section of this?
No, I just I'm just so thrilled with it. I'm sure Sully and Mark are experiencing the same things. Like, the more we use it now, the more you're like, even on your days off, you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, I got to go try it on this. What am I possibly thinking? So it just keeps getting more and more. And then the beautiful thing about it is, the more of that I use, the less I'm using of other stuff. I find myself unwinding things and relying on Soothe to do it.
Yeah.
But now, as opposed to a lot of other processing. So it's very refreshing for me. And it just sounds, the best part about it just sounds so natural. It doesn't sound processed.
You're not having to try so hard, right? It's taking the kind of stress out of it. Sully, I know it was all over your show last night, and again, that was a spectacularly good sounding show. You don't maybe share some of the stuff that you were using it on the show last night. You were mixing Roger Waters in the round, in Palazzo.
Yeah, his background vocals, the saxophone, everything at the end, my cymbals, my ride cymbal, the guitar players. I mean, I have it on. If I showed you my plugin window, you'd be like, oh, this guy likes Soothe a lot, doesn't he? Because it's everywhere, And because we're in beta, and I'm trying to stress it and see what, if we can trip it, make it fall over, and it can't. I've tried, as much as I can to really put it through its paces and beat it up, and it just keeps going. What? That's all you got for me? Like, come on, let's go. And it's just amazing. It's, imagining that the show you heard last night without it is, would it be doable? Yeah, I could do it, but there'd be things that would stick out. The saxophones, like Ollie was saying, we clip these mics where we can get them on things instead of where they should be done. And the sax is a perfect example of that. It's just clipped to the bell. And depending on how the user is, biting on the mouthpiece, you can get it really honky. And I'm not, there's just so many different things that a saxophone can do that you can't keep up with. Even I tried with multi-bands in the past and dynamic EQs, and even those can't keep up with it. But Soothe with, the capabilities, the speed and the detail, you can really get at these things and make them, be your friend, because live sound can be your enemy a lot of times. And concert sound in arenas, obnoxious spaces, the more you excite these spaces with frequencies that are no good, the more they bite back and come at you harder. And Soothe just makes it really easy to keep things in check and keep the room the way it should be and go home with a great night and successful, making my job easier for sure.
Nice. So MC, I'm looking forward to seeing you. And I'm seeing you in LA in a couple of weeks' time, right? At the Muse concert. Yeah. And the last time I saw music was a few years ago now, so obviously pre-Soothe. So I'm intrigued to see what you've been doing, which also was a stunningly good sounding show, by the way. But I'm looking forward to seeing the 2.0 version of it.
Yeah, I think the thing with the Soothe for me is, a big thing for me is always, and for all of us, is you're trying to retain artistic intention. So for instance, with Muse, there's quite an extreme range of guitar sounds going on, and I've always made it my mission to make sure that artistic intention is conveyed to the audience, and you're not hacking things out, that you're not fucking with the tone too much, but to make it a palatable listen has always been the challenge. Sorry, by palatable I mean to make it work at that amplified level. And Soothe for me has been a great tool for that very thing, retaining artistic intention. Examples like both Sully and Robert would talk about with acoustic instruments and different types of inputs. And I think that's a big part of it. From an artistic point of view, we can retain much more of the artist's intention. And that's a huge part.
Absolutely. And it's almost like you can put more energy into it, right? You can have a little bit louder without it being so harsh and so ugly. You can like Sully's show was pumping last night. It was a great volume for a rock show, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was just powerful and loud, right? So thanks for that.
Yeah, and Soothe has really come along at the right time with where line array is at the moment as well, where where we're at, Soothe arrived at the perfect time for that.
It's funny you say that, because I was having a discussion with one of the guys at Claire's, one of the head engineers at Claire the other day, talking about this process and thinking, man, wouldn't that be an incredible process to have as a system processor, as part of a system processor?
Yeah, certainly on the outputs, the speakers, right?
Yeah. Think about the efficiency gain there.
Oh yeah. So how many plugins? It's like 40 or something on one HDX card. Is that right? I'm making it
mono. It's 54 mono or 36 stereo. So it's like 3 per core of mono or 2 per core of stereo.
That's incredibly efficient and low latency.
Yeah, it's I think it's 95 samples at 96K. The round trip latency to and back from the HDX card. So that's just under 1 millisecond. We try to make it fast enough for monitoring purposes for in-ear monitors, because that sort of approaches the hearing threshold of a human being. But that was the sort of driving point of we had it. The first beta, I think it was 2 milliseconds of latency. We were already quite glad about it, but then starting to think about it, we felt like that it could be cut down 1 millisecond more, but it just took a lot of more work and sort of fiddling around with the order of things
that's stunning. That's the same kind of latency that we have on just a regular compressor on our system. So
it's a sort of same latency that you have on a limiter, I guess. So
very, very cool. So listen, I'm gonna one thing I should say, so this software comes out on April the 4th. Get my corporate hat on. Comes out on April the 4th. the very, very good news is if you own an S6L, that we're going to just drop it in your account, a 1 year NFR for free. And if you buy an S6L in the next year, you're going to get one of these for free. So there you go. Thank you for sticking around on the S6L platform. Thank you for owning our products, and that's our gift to you. So that means if you're a mixer, you don't own an S6L, the Soothe should be on every desk that you walk up to wherever you are. And if you walk up to a desk and it doesn't have Soothe on it, it's because the people don't have a support contract in it. Maybe they should think about it. Chant Pick, have you got some questions for us for the panel?
Hey, Rob. Yeah, there's a few that came in. First of all, they wanted to thank Ollie for making this plugin for them. They're looking very much forward to using it on S6L. You just answered the next one, which is the release date, which is, I believe you said April 4th was release date.
I did, yeah.
Yes. Cool. And the other one was more or less about uses and how the guys here are using them. So I'll start, and whoever wants to jump in and answer that, please do. So one of them is, what other plugins do you commonly use in line with Soothe, and where in the signal chain is Soothe when you use multiple plugins?
I mean,
Yeah,
personally
Mark, go
speaking,
ahead.
yeah, it's you know, obviously it's program dependent, input dependent, but like what the chain you would normally use, you can use, and you just put Soothe on the end of that chain. So you don't have to rethink your whole process. Like Robert's alluded to, though, is as you get used to using Soothe, you find you will maybe use less of those. So for instance, in a vocal, if you normally have an EQ and a compressor, you would just have an EQ compressor and Soothe at the end. And as you get used to using Soothe, you may find that you're using less of the EQ or less of the compression.
Perfect. Yeah, that answers the next part of that, which is the positioning of that plugin. The next would be going in line with what you said was, do you find yourself not needing to use multi-band compression or dynamic EQ, or is it still used, just not as much? And it sounds like it's, for you at least, you're not using it quite as heavy-handed as you were before, and smoothing it out with Soothe at the end, or Soothe at the end. Is that how you use it, Sully?
Yeah, I have a couple of places where I started initially with a dynamic EQ and Soothe in line. And now, the dynamic EQ used to be trying its best to do what Soothe would do. And so now I'm just using, basically, instead of really fine detail with the dynamic EQ, now I'm still keeping it in line, but I'm very, very small dips or pushes on things and letting Soothe do the heavy work with the, getting the fine details out of it. Where the dynamic EQ, because with a dynamic EQ, you just set the filter, like say I want 2K is a problem. Where with Soothe, if you tell Soothe to look at 2K and open the width up, it'll find, as when you sing relative pitch to frequency content, that stuff changes constantly. And so a dynamic EQ can only be set at one filter, and then it just hangs out there. Where Soothe goes, okay, I know you told me look at 2K, but you got some stuff going on here at 1.6 that I'm going to help you out with as well. And so I find that I'm backing the dynamic EQs off and just letting Soothe do the heavy-handed stuff. And now, like we talked about earlier, we're just shaping sound and getting the tonality of it the way we want with the other EQs or a dynamic EQ, and then letting Soothe do the hard hitting of things. And because Soothe is so transparent, like even when it's really beating hard on something, you could not hear it. It just stays out of the way. And you're like Mark says, it's working when you don't notice it. And it's great for that.
For sure. Yeah. And I'm assuming you would kind of concur with that, Robert. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I honestly, I got some alternative thinking there. What I've ended up using it on in vocals is actually using it early in the chain, right? So I'll do equalization followed by Soothe, and then into any limiting or compression. And I find that both the limiter and the compressor react way more predictably now. Like it's much easier to set a threshold on it. Once you get it, I'll call it soothed out. Once you get it soothed out, then the whole processing chain just seems to react better. So
that's awesome. Yeah, and I love the use of Sully bringing it up for the into the verb. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I stole it from Sully after we did the interview. I'm just
right. We talked about that a while ago.
And I did it, and I was like, oh, I am never going back there. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So a couple of questions. Does it affect phase? Do you guys hear anything in terms of phase that's being affected?
I do not.
Don't hear it. Ollie,
No.
do you want to talk to that?
And naturally, any process, especially if it's an EQ process, does affect phase. It is to most extent minimum phase, and it has the sort of the sort of minimum phase processing that we do tends to what it ends up being often is that it's linear. The phase is linear for the main peaks of the signal anyway. So yes, it does affect phase, but you shouldn't be able to hear it because the actual sort of the signal itself is masking the phase issue itself. So it has a the mix knob that I personally at least use a lot all the time, which is as mix does, it just mixes dry signal into the wet signal to sort of process a bit heavier than I would perhaps do without the mix, and then just mix it back down a bit. But there is no phase issues that I'm aware of, because that's the sort of my recommended way of using it.
Yeah, I would add this to that conversation.
Oh, you froze up
lost
there,
Robert.
Robert.
Yeah.
We've frozen up. He's in a front of house in some stadium someplace. So he's obviously somebody's cut the Wi-Fi.
To that question, I mean, it is a very transparent plugin. So I'm sure Robert will hopefully join back in and finish up his thought there. But while we're waiting for that connection to happen, has anybody noticed any negative effect on the overall energy when you put it across the left-right? Is there anything that you can think in terms of just like weighing the mix down a little bit? And I would say no, because again, it's very transparent, but that was a question.
I guess it would depend how you used it. If you set the depth as far as it go, you could destroy the mix bus, and it would, everything. If you set it wide band without anything, detail or any of the sensitivities turned up, and just had it flat across there, and then turn the depth all the way up, you would get rid of the mix. You definitely can use it to go against you. There's like everything, the controls are there for your, interpretation of how they should be used. So hopefully the presets give guys starting points that aren't, at the level they think they want to be at to decide how it should be used. But just know if the GUI is, cutting a lot of stuff out, you're getting rid of a lot of audio. That's for sure. So you can destroy stuff for sure.
Robert, did you want to finish up your remark on the phase?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I cut off till I realized nobody else was moving on screen. I was like, oh, okay. I was just saying that when you have an acoustic instrument where PA system or whatever is creating overtone on it, the phase of that instrument that we're listening to is horrible to begin with as a result of that. So if you can use Soothe to take care of that overtone series, the apparent phase of the instrument is better to begin with. So, it just helps. It just helps. Absolutely.
Very cool. I'll tell you one thing we didn't touch upon was the Delta feature, which actually shows you what allows you to listen to the frequencies that you're affecting. I mean, you want to just throw that for a second, Chris? Did you guys use that? I know, Silly, I think you were working with that, right?
Yeah, I'm using it as not how it's intended though, as a parallel process, and I'm dynamically adding things to snare drum, crack to snare drum, and those kind of things with it. If you leave it in Delta, of course, if it's on the input that you're listening to, then you'll just hear what it's removing. But if you add it to a signal, I guess it would kind of be like my own version of spiff a little bit. I'm kind of faking spiff a little bit. So it could be very artistic as well. It's not as well as just be able to tell like, what am I attacking on this input? When you're listening, when you click it on Delta, it shows you exactly what it's removing and nothing else.
Very cool. I mean, I'll also, when we're talking about taking energy out of the mix, I think like all effects units, it's always great to set them up and then bypass them just to double check you are making it better. Right? It's kind of fundamental, but worth restating.
And the last question, real quick for Ollie: are there any plans to bring any other plugins like Spiff to the Venue product line?
That is a good question, and it remains to be seen. At the moment, we haven't planned on anything, but it's something that we we started investigating already. So can't promise anything, but it's an interesting idea.
Let's get this one out the door and then have that conversation, right, Ollie?
Yeah.
You and me offline.
That wraps up about all the questions we had, Rob.
That's great. Well, that's perfect in terms of timing. Thank you for taking this time out of your busy schedule, and having this for me at least, super interesting conversation. We've all actually learned kind of little things from each other. I've been, I'm going to listen back to the recording and steal all of your great ideas for my next mix. So, as usual, MC, right?
I'm just going to be suggesting mandolins and banjos left, right, and center, melodicas. Yeah,
There you go.
bring on the bad stuff. Yeah,
Brilliant. Thanks, Robert, for I know you got a hard stop, you got a line check or something you got to go to. So, thanks, man. And Sully, pleasure, man. Great to see you. Thanks for your insights. Really, really important. Ollie, well, we've done a lot of work together last year. It's been great. And I'll see you in NAM in a couple of weeks' time.
Great seeing all you
forward to it.
guys. Thanks for the invite in. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ollie. Appreciate the process, man.
you.
It's just fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.
yeah,
Thanks.
nice one.
Yeah, we'll record this. You'll be able to find it on the Avid website if you missed it or you want to tell your friends about it. So that's it. Goodbye.
All right.